Good morning, honorable members, and let's pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Honorable members, good morning and welcome to our Tuesday, 25th June 2024 morning session. As you can see that there are a number of changes in the House, and I can see some members are sitting comfortable, which is a very good, is good progress for us. All right, thank you. Honorable members, as I was saying, you are welcome. As you can see that the seats has been fixed, and any feedback on the comfortability, you can give it to our clerk after the session. So clerk, order of business.
Order number 1, administration of oath.
Next.
Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Next.
Order number 3, messages.
Next.
Order number 4, petitions.
Next.
Order number 5, papers.
Next.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Honorable Chairman for Budget and Appropriation Committee, the Honorable Albert Kipkoech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to give notice of the following motion. That, Mr. Speaker, first I will request that we change order number 8 and 9, so that 9 comes first, because this document was submitted to this assembly last year, November.
As
thank you, Chairman.
Proceed.
So I wish to give notice of the following motion, that this House approves the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the Kericho County Budget Review and Outlook Paper 2023. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Chairman, you have to.
I give out notice of the two motions.
You give out notices of the
Okay,
two
no problem.
motions.
Thank you. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to give notice of another motion, that this House approves the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the County Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, the Honorable Chairman. Honorable members, stand guided that we'll start with the motion number 9, and then back to number 8 in that order. So, clerk, next order.
Order number 8, motion by chairman of Budget and Appropriation Committee.
Order number, clerk.
Or in preparing the budget for 2020. Speaker, the CPROP also accounts for changes and reasons for economic deviations compared to the County Fiscal Strategy Paper 2024. Mr. Speaker, the legal basis for the preparation of the County Budget and Review and Outlook Paper, CPROP, is that Section 18 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 states that, number 1, a county treasurer shall prepare a county budget review and outlook paper in respect of the county for each financial year. And number 2 is to submit the paper to the County Executive Committee by 30th September of that year. In preparing its county budget review and outlook paper, the county treasurer shall specify the details of the actual physical performance in the previous year compared to the budget appropriation for that year. Mr. Speaker, the updated economic and financial forecasts with the sufficient information to show changes from the forecast in most recent county fiscal strategy paper. And then number 4, Mr. Speaker, is that, or the third one, Mr. Speaker, is information on any changes in the forecast compared with county fiscal strategy paper, or how actual performance for the previous financial year may have affected compliance with the fiscal responsibility principles of the financial objectives in the county fiscal strategy paper for the financial year, and reasons for any deviations from the financial objectives in the county fiscal strategy paper together. Mr. Speaker, the County Executive Committee shall consider the county budget review and outlook paper with a view to approving it with or without amendments. Mr. Speaker, sir, within 14 days after its submission and not later than 7 days after the county budget review and outlook paper is approved by the County Executive Committee, the County Treasury shall arrange for the paper to be laid before the County Assembly, and as soon as possible, after having done so, publish and publicize the paper. Mr. Speaker, sir, on comparatives, we will start with the revenues. Mr. Speaker, sir, in that financial year 2022-2023, national equitable share, we received 6,430,664,924 shillings, and the actual collections in that financial year, Mr. Speaker, is 6,430,664,924. There was no deviations in that fiscal year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our own source and facility improvement fund, FIF, and local collections, our projection or our target was 1,019,388,053, and we managed to raise 495,676,545. In the financial year 2022-2023, there was a deviation in our local revenues of 523,711,508 shillings, which is negative 51%. Mr. Speaker, sir, on that financial year, we didn't receive anything from user fee reimbursement. We received road maintenance fuel levy, RMLF, of 8,916,435, and we received the 8,916,435. Mr. Speaker, we also received the NIDA fund of Kenya shilling 9,180,000, and we collected in our CRF account 5,960,625, and there was a deviation of 3,219,375, which is 35%. The Speaker, under SE Agriculture Sector Support Fund, ASDSP 1, the target was 43,114,132 shillings. But, Mr. Speaker, we received 9,250,013 shillings. So there was a deviation of 33,864,119. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Devolution Support Program, our target was 102,491,953. And Mr. Speaker, we received all the monies, 102,491,953 shillings. Mr. Speaker, under transformative L system, we received, we were expecting 75,443,658, and we received the same amount of 75,443,658. The Speaker, under the Climate Smart Agriculture Project, our expectation was 149,190,522, and we received 126,184,585. So there was a deviation of 23,005,937 shillings. Mr. Speaker, under Kenya Urban Support Program UDG, we expected 1,194,559, and we received the same amount of 1,194,559. Mr. Speaker, under Kenya Urban Support Program UIG, we expected 1,145,356, and we received the same amount of 1,145,356. Mr. Speaker, Climate Change Institutional Support, World Bank, from World Bank, we expected 22 million, and we received the same amount of 22 million. We add also, Mr. Speaker, insurance compensation, of which we expected 5,675,000, and we received, Mr. Speaker, the same amount. National Agriculture Value Chain, NAFIC DP, our expectation was 70 million, but what we received as actuals, Mr. Speaker, is 67,192,729. I'd spent balances for that financial year, 2022-2023, was 515,165,509. But what we received as actuals was 200,879,611. So there was a deviation of 314,285,898, which is 61%. So, Mr. Speaker, under global expenditure, as at 30th June 2023, the total expenditure was Kenya shilling 7,622,678,993 against total budget of Kenya shilling 8,453,573,101, representing approximately 90% absorptions. The County Public Service Board recorded the highest absorption rate of Kenya shilling 108%, indicating over expenditure of 8%, while the Department of Public Service Management had the lowest absorption at 84%, as shown in the table below. Mr. Speaker, the budget for agriculture was 542,616,554, but they utilized 472,598,349. So there was a variance of 70 million, Mr. Speaker. Department of Education, what was budgeted was 673,432,365. They managed to utilize 581,466,164. So there was a variance, Mr. Speaker, of 91,966,201. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Finance and Economic Planning, there was a budget of 1,035,830,268. They managed to utilize 922,466,533. So 94,626,353 in a nutshell, Mr. Speaker, was not utilized in the Department of Finance. Mr. Speaker, Department of Health Services, there was a budget of 3,049,621,048. What was utilized was 2,754,262,717. And what was not utilized, Mr. Speaker, was 295,358,331 shillings. The Speaker, ICT had a budget of 92,195,004. They utilized 81,783,680. So they did not utilize 10 million, Mr. Speaker, 411,324. Under lands, housing and fiscal planning, Mr. Speaker, what was in the budget that fiscal year, Mr. Speaker, was 195,556,952, and they utilized, Mr. Speaker, 191,743,163. They did not utilize, Mr. Speaker, 3,813,789. Mr. Speaker, Office of the Governor, what was in the budget was 166,179,145, and they utilized 169,717,643. So, Mr. Speaker, in this department there was over expenditure of 3,538,498 shillings, which is 102% of the budget. Mr. Speaker, under PSM, what was budgeted was what was in the budget was 430,820,597, and they managed to utilize 361,103,672. So what was not utilized, Mr. Speaker, was 69,716,925. Public Works, Roads and Transport, what was in the budget, Mr. Speaker, was 647,785,460. And the actuals, Mr. Speaker, what was utilized was 580,739,282. So which means, Mr. Speaker, this department did not utilize 67,046,178 shillings. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Trade, what was in the budget was 64,149,546, and they managed to utilize 55,826,912. So they didn't utilize 8,322,634. The Speaker, Department of Tourism, Wildlife and Cooperative Management. The Speaker, Department of Water, Energy, Natural Resources and Environment. They had a budget of 518,426,446, and they utilized 474,981,811. So, Mr. Speaker, what this department did not utilize was 43,444,636. Department of County Public Service Board, they had a budget of 57,471,889, and they used 61,929,772. In this department, Mr. Speaker, there was over expenditure of 4,457,883 shillings. The government supplements the national shareable revenue by maximizing on-source revenue collection through revenue automation. Mr. Speaker, the receivers of revenue should minimize leakages and stabilize revenue streams. And the fourth recommendation, Mr. Speaker, is that the County Executive Committee in charge of the county departments reduce non-priority expenditures so as to realize value for money. Mr. Speaker, the county department fast-track procurement of goods and services to boost absorption rate of our funds. Mr. Speaker, the sixth recommendation is that the sectoral committee be involved in the rollout of programs and the implementation through effective oversight. The seventh, Mr. Speaker, is that the joint committees on budget and appropriation and finance and economic planning investigate collection and leakages of on-source revenue in the county. And the last one is that all the departmental receivers of revenue take charge and make disclosures on on-source revenue streams and actual revenue collected. Mr. Speaker, allow me to acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, that the committee wishes to thank the Office of the Speaker and the Clerk of the Assembly for the necessary support extended to it in the execution of its mandate. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's now my pleasure and duty, passion to Standing Order 201 to present the report of the County Budget Referendum Outlook Paper, CPROP 2023 for consideration and subsequent adoption by this Honorable House. I will request Majority Leader to second. Thank you.
Thank you, the Honorable Leader of Majority. You second the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to second the motion, Mr. Speaker. And maybe you'll give me an opportunity once again, Mr. Speaker. I want to back that one, Mr. Speaker, as I finish what I was writing, Mr. Speaker. But for now, all right, I stand to second the motion, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you so much, the Leader of Majority. Of course, the standing orders are very clear. You should have just stood and second. Nevertheless, I will give you an opportunity so that you can contribute to the motion. So, honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that this House approves the report of Budget and Appropriation Committee on Kericho County Budget Review and Outlook Paper 2023. So the floor is open for contribution. Yes. The Honorable Kiprotich Rokon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support the report tabled by the Chairman, Budget and Appropriation Committee. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious and a critical document that guides the county government during the preparation of budgets. Mr. Speaker, I want to go straight to observation. Mr. Speaker, it is true for nearly 2 financial years, this document has always shown that Kericho County has not been meeting its own source revenue, which is critical in budgetary process. Mr. Speaker, we've given a number of recommendations over and over, and it looks, Mr. Speaker, still the county government of Kericho is not meeting its own source revenue, which is a component of the revenues used in budget making process. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge this House that even as we move forward, you saw from the recommendation that the chairman, the committee has proposed that we work with the committee of finance, so that we try and look possible ways of sealing the loopholes that has been witnessed in our own revenue collection. Mr. Speaker, number two, you can see from this report that there are departments which overspent. They spent beyond their budgets. Case in point is the Public Service Board, Mr. Speaker, from this report, spending by more than 8%. That means, Mr. Speaker, if this was going to be the issue, then it means in future, the county government of Kericho may not, whenever you allocate some of these funds and the department spends beyond its own budget, it tends to create loopholes. Number one, there will be some not even pending bills carried forward to the next financial year. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge this House that even as we pass this document, we approve this document, let us be very vigilant in our various committees so that we hold the executive to account for all the monies that is budgeted in their departments. Mr. Speaker, very often, if you look at this document, we have a number of variances. One, it means we have a number of pending bills that the department may commit and they are unable to do the works. One, it can be occasioned by the revenues shortages, but again, we have departments with funds, but they are unable to roll out projects. There was a department like water, Mr. Speaker, that up to this point, the financial year is ending, and we had a number of projects pending. They are not committed. So in the next financial year, it will be reading unspent balances. Mr. Speaker, this is wrong, because when we get the shareable revenue, though we will have declared the unspent balances, but it is not the prudent way of doing work in this county. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, as part of the recommendation, I want to urge the Committee on Public Accounts, is it public accounts even? Implementation. We've done a number of reports in our various committees, and some of these reports, they have not been acted on. I want to urge the Chairman, Implementation Committee, to follow up on this so that this county will realize the proper use of public funds, because at the end of the day, the people who elected us will be judging this House over the manner in which the county government of Kericho is using its resources. With this, Mr. Speaker, I support the report.
All right, thank you, Honorable Ogon. The Honorable Cheriot Bet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And of course, by extension, the people who sent me, Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support the report that was sponsored by the Chair Budget and of course the budget members, Mr. Speaker, of this report. Mr. Speaker, one clearing issue, Mr. Speaker, is that this report has been tabled very late, Mr. Speaker, because if you look at the functions, I mean, the reasons why we are tabling, the reason why we are supposed to be looking at something million, Mr. Speaker, and that is almost 102%, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another department that overspent is the County Public Service Board, 108, Mr. Speaker. You are eating, I mean, you are spending more than what you have, Mr. Speaker. So that should be avoided going into the future, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also, I've seen some department that the absorption rate is a bit low, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the absorption rate of every department should be 100% because we have budgeted for this money, Mr. Speaker. It's unfortunate because the committee that I lead, I mean the department that I lead in oversight, Mr. Speaker, that is the Committee on Education, Early Childhood, Mr. Speaker, Sports, Culture and Social Services, is the second last, Mr. Speaker, with absorption rate of 86%. This was occasioned, Mr. Speaker, because of a pull and push and pull on the issues of the bursary that we had previously, Mr. Speaker. But I want to confirm to this House, Mr. Speaker, that when we are now doing the CPROM for 23-24 financial year, Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that all our monies are spent well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, of great importance also, Mr. Speaker, is that the disbursement from the Exchequer were prompt, Mr. Speaker. And we want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank His Excellency the President, because if not the money from the Exchequer, Mr. Speaker, I know this county will have been closed long time ago, Mr. Speaker. If you look at that committee observation, Mr. Speaker, we got the disbursement from the Exchequer very promptly, Mr. Speaker. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, the county government of Kericho, Mr. Speaker, the collection is very poor, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to own source revenue, Mr. Speaker. So we need to also, Mr. Speaker, demand from the county executive, especially the Department of Finance, Mr. Speaker, that they should also copy what the national government is doing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, but this has always been an issue that we are singing every other time, Mr. Speaker. If there is the elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker, then it is the own source revenue collection, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we were doing our budget, Mr. Speaker, the entire last week and part of this week, Mr. Speaker. When you go through that budget, Mr. Speaker, you see there is no seriousness on the side of the executive, Mr. Speaker, to collect. I don't know what are we going to do, Mr. Speaker, because when even you look at, there is no system, Mr. Speaker, but the department has no plan for even procuring a system, Mr. Speaker. So I think, I don't know what we are going to do, Mr. Speaker. The majority leader is here. And you know, if we don't collect our own source revenue, Mr. Speaker, then it means some of the projects will be scaled down, Mr. Speaker. I don't know, the chair for finance, Mr. Speaker, is not even around. And we had a discussion in Nakuru. And I think he also needs to pull up his socks, Mr. Speaker. No reasons why these people are not collecting revenue, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, is about the issues of. In fact, Mr. Speaker, let me end there, Mr. Speaker, so that I give an opportunity to someone else. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity.
All right, thank you, members. As the Honorable Leader of Majority, you had requested that to the motion. So I'll give you, as the mover of the motion, prepare to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity once again. Mr. Speaker, I was doing my own brief summary, Mr. Speaker, on these absorption rates, Mr. Speaker. And for this case, the chairman for PSM, that is governance, labor, Mr. Speaker, from the look of things, Mr. Speaker, his department that is oversighting, Mr. Speaker, and the Committee on Governance, Labor and Social Service, Committee on Governance, Mr. Speaker, seems to have done good only in the line of the County Public Service Board, Mr. Speaker, that they absorbed more than even what they were given, Mr. Speaker. But these other departments, Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that the departments on lands, housing, and physical planning, from the percentage, Mr. Speaker, they seem to have absorbed around 98%, Mr. Speaker. But there are these other departments that they are doing bad, Mr. Speaker, in terms of absorption rates, Mr. Speaker. Chairman for Education is here, Mr. Speaker, and the chairman for Education is serving his third term, Mr. Speaker, being the chair in the same committee, Mr. Speaker. But you see, out of the total allocation that we allocated the Department of Education, that is 673 million, Mr. Speaker. They only managed to spend 581, Mr. Speaker. Despite that percentage, they are doing 86%, Mr. Speaker. But you see the variance is close to 91 million, Mr. Speaker. So So, Mr. Speaker, they need to pull up their socks, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to preempt, Mr. Speaker, but I'm working on it, Mr. Speaker, that we need to look into ways and methods of strengthening the oversight on this finance and economic planning department, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that they up their game in terms of revenue collection. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I kindly request that all the chairpersons to go through this report keenly, Mr. Speaker, and do what they are supposed to do. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Okay, thank you, the Honorable Leader of Majority. So the mover of the motion, you can proceed to reply to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank honorable members for supporting this report. And I want to echo what Majority Leader said, that sectoral committee chairs should raise the occasion and make sure that they follow up what we approve in this county assembly so that absorption rate may come down. Because as per this report, we are not doing good. Others, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
All right, thank you, the Honorable Chairman, Budget and Appropriation Committee. I now rise to put the question that this House approves the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on Kericho County Budget Review and Outlook Paper 2023. Will as many as are of similar opinion say aye? Will as many as are of contrary opinion say nay? And the ayes have it. Honorable members, thank you. Before we move to the next order, I would like to give the following directive in regards to the report that has been adopted by this House. Of course, having raised some issues and listening to the sentiments of the honorable members, the Committee on Implementation, I direct the Committee on Implementation and the Leader of Majority note this, and I don't know whether any member of the Committee on Implementation is in the House. That as per your standing order number 203, subsection 2, you have powers, of course, to investigate on particularly the violation of the law, that is the implementation of the budget. And I direct that you investigate the expenditure of County Public Service Board as well as that of the Office of the Governor, and establish the reasons why there is under expenditure by those percentages. Honorable members, let me remind you so that the executive, that when budgets have been approved, they need to stick. So the chairman, implementation, please, through the Leader of Majority, please, the Leader of Majority, you heard what I have directed. Yes, that the Committee on Implementation look into those two departments where they have reported over expenditure and report to this House in the next 21 days. And before we proceed to the next agenda, the Honorable Leader of Majority, I'm reliably informed that there is a committee that is ongoing, which is against our standing orders. All the members should be here as we deliberate on this very pertinent matter. And in fact, Clerk, whatever the discussion that is going on there shall only be null and void because they are doing it at the wrong time. So the Clerk, I would like to see the answered after the session. Honorable members, the Leader of Majority, please, you advise your members accordingly, so that even if they have any agenda that they need to deliberate on, they need to critically follow the traditions as well as the standing orders of this House. That so, Sergeant Adam, I direct that you go and you close that committee room, and honorable members to be in the assembly, in the plenary. Clerk, next order.
Order number 9, motion by the Chairman of Budget and Appropriation Committee.
The Honorable Chairman, Budget and Appropriation Committee, the Honorable Albert Kikwech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to move the following motion that this House approves the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the County Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024. Mr. Speaker, on 28 February 2023, the Office of the Clerk received the Debt Management Strategy Paper for 2023 in line with Section 123(1) of the PFM Act 2012, which stipulates that the County Treasury shall submit to the County Assembly a statement setting a debt management strategy of the county government. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Budget and Appropriation is established pursuant to Kericho County Assembly Standing Order 201, which states that there shall be a select committee to be known as the County Budget and Appropriation Committee, and the functions is as stipulated there. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to go to 2.0, which is Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024. Mr. Speaker, the Debt Management Strategy Paper for 2024 is the 10th edition for the County Government of Kericho, and the legal basis for preparation of Debt Management Strategy Paper is that Section 123 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 provides that the County Treasury shall include the following in the preparation of Debt Management Strategy Paper. Number 1 is that the total stock of debt as at the date of the statement. Number 2 is the source of loans made to the county government. The third one is the principal risk associated with those loans. The fourth one is the assumptions underlying the debt management strategy. And the fifth one, Mr. Speaker, is an analysis of the sustainability of the amount of debt, both actual and potential. Mr. Speaker, scrutiny of the debt portfolio is that the county government debt currently stands at Kenya shilling 932,875,043, as shown below. The first one, Mr. Speaker, is statutory debts of 244,211,072, which is 26%. And then there is also loans and overdrafts, which takes 18,093,701, which is 2%. And Mr. Speaker, there is also payments to suppliers, which takes 204,772,101, which is 22%. And then, Mr. Speaker, there is also pending bills as at 31st December 2023, which is 465,798,519, which is 55%, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is also breakdown of all this, Mr. Speaker, is the statutory debts. I'll start with statutory debts. The statutory debts comprise of unremitted pension funds, that is LAP Trust and LAP Fund, the pensions funds under Provident and Trust Fund, which accumulates interest exponentially. That's the need under medium term to give them priority to settle the debt. The schedule below details the liabilities owned by the county government that were inherited from the defunct local authorities. The Speaker, LAP Fund from the defunct local authority takes 42,667,290, which is 17.4%, interest and penalty included. The Speaker, there is also LAP Fund from the county government, which takes 177,400,420, which takes 72%, 72.64%, interest and penalty bearing. Then there's also LAP Trust, CPF, 24,143,362, which takes 9.89%, interest and penalty bearing. Mr. Speaker, and that one totals to 244,211,072. Mr. Speaker, under loans, it should be noted that housing loans granted to former Londiani Town and Kericho Municipal Council have accrued interest and penalty. It should be noted the National Housing Corporation took over the collection of rent of some county houses in order to facilitate payment of debts owed to the corporation, and the details of the loans are shown below. Number 1, National Housing Corporation mortgage, which takes 18,093,701 shillings, interest and penalty included. And Mr. Speaker, others, these are generally debts incurred by the defunct local authorities from the contract awarded to suppliers of goods and services to prevent legal liabilities. The county government is expected to offset the said liabilities. Mr. Speaker, we have been budgeting for these monies since inception of devolution, but unfortunately they have not been paying. So it's now time, Mr. Speaker, that implementation committee does something to make sure, because it's almost 11 years, but there is no payments. Mr. Speaker, under these others, there is provisional fees, which is legal audit, 23,549,000, which is 11.5%, no interest but legal implications. And there is also supply of goods and services, which takes 181,223,111 shillings, which takes 88.50, non-interest but legal implications. Mr. Speaker, that others takes 204,772,111 shillings. Mr. Speaker, there's also pending bills. The pending bills comprising of payments not made to contractors and suppliers who provide services to the county government but were not paid. These pending bills will be paid in this, it's supposed to be paid in this financial year, which is 2023-2024. Mr. Speaker, let me outline the pending bills. I'll start with recurrent. Agriculture, livestock, fisheries, and cooperative development, as at 31st December 2023, had a pending bill of 319,000 shillings. Department of Education, Youth Affairs, Sports, Culture, and Social Services had a pending bill as at 31st December 2023 of 1,739,140. Finance and Economic Planning, including strategic intervention, had 7,013,600 shillings. Health Services, as at 31st December 2023, had a pending bill of 41,603. ICT had a pending bill of 28,878,057. Executive Office of the Governor had a pending bill of 2,819,900 shillings. County Public Service Board had a pending bill of 967,735. Land Housing and Fiscal Planning had a pending bill as at 31st December 2023, 4,242,708. Public Service Management had a pending bill of 4,982,144 shillings. Then Public Works, Roads and Transport had a pending bill as at 31st December 2023 of recurrent of Kenya shilling 16,169,023. Then Department of Water, Environment, Energy, Forestry and Natural Resources had a pending bill of 37,174,137. That, Mr. Speaker, was under recurrent. Under development, Mr. Speaker, Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperative Development as at 31st December 2023 had a pending bill of 17,134,036. Then Education, Youth Affairs, Sports, Culture and Social Services had a pending bill of 14,788,947. Finance and Economic Planning had a pending bill of 40,203,846. Then Health Services had a pending bill of 9,116,720. ICT had a pending bill of 18,879,349. Land Housing and Fiscal Planning, 8,898,772 shillings. And then Public Service Management had a pending bill of 12,199,431. Public Works, Roads and Transport, as at 31st December 2023, had a pending bill of 201,835,424. The Speaker, lastly, Water, Environment, Energy, Forestry and Natural Resources had a pending bill of 276,000. So, Mr. Speaker, in total, by 31st December 2023, County had a pending bill of 465,798,519. The Speaker, the committee noted that most of the huge amount of debt constitutes pending bills, which has continued to grow over time, despite the County Assembly recommendations that such a debt be settled as a matter of urgency. Mr. Speaker, our observation as the committee is that matters relating to pending bills, as recommended by the County Assembly Committee of Public Accounts and Investment in the financial year 2017-2018, had not been resolved. However, effort to reduce the pending bills had been exhibited. The second observation, Mr. Speaker, is that the statutory debt classified as salary arrears does not accrue interest, whereas the Provident Fund, which is LAP Fund and LAP Trust, and loans from the National Housing Corporation accrue interest and penalty on its debt. Mr. Speaker, the third observation is that the debts owed to various institutions, if not managed well, results to loss of public funds, and this shall go against the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 on principles of public finance management. And the fourth observation, Mr. Speaker, is that it was evident that debts and liabilities inherited from the defunct local authorities had not been resolved. Mr. Speaker, committee recommendations, the first one is that the payment of pending bills should be treated as a priority in the financial year 2024-2025 budget, and the county executive should provide for funds to resolve the accumulated debts. Mr. Speaker, the second recommendation is that the debts owed to various institutions be paid as per the timelines so that the county government should not be penalized with a huge interest. The third recommendation, Mr. Speaker, is the county executive must map out strategies to dispose of all matters relating to statutory debts inherited from the defunct local authorities, and that the Committee on Finance and Economic Planning should liaise with the respective sectoral committees in deliberating on pending bills accrued in the past financial year. Mr. Speaker, this one I would request for more emphasis so that sectoral chairs do something. Mr. Speaker, the fourth recommendation is that all statutory obligations comprising of unremitted pension funds, LAPTOS and LAP fund, must first be charged to avoid accumulation of interests that will be costly to the county government. Then the fifth one, Mr. Speaker, is that there must be constant monitoring and review of performance and progress made on the county debt management strategy. Mr. Speaker, allow me to acknowledge the committee wishes to thank the Office of the Speaker and the Clerk of the County Assembly for the support extended in fulfilling its mandate. And Mr. Speaker, I would also like to express my gratitude to the County Assembly Budget Office and Secretariat attached to this committee for their unwavering support given to this committee. It is therefore, Mr. Speaker, my pleasant undertaking on behalf of the Budget and Appropriation Committee to table the report on the Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024 and recommend it to the House for considerations and adoption. Mr. Speaker, I will request the Honorable Kiprotich Rogony. Second, thank you.
The Honorable Kiprotich Rogony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion tabled by the Chairman, Budget and Appropriation Committee, that entails the report of the County Debt Management Strategy, Paper 2024. Mr. Speaker, I'll only highlight a few things. One, Mr. Speaker, that it's unfortunate that the county government of Kericho has not fully settled what was even inherited from the defunct local authorities, especially on unremitted statutory deductions. Mr. Speaker, some of these debts continue to attract interest, which is not so good, and it will definitely, in unforeseen time in future, it will actually affect the implementation of the budget. Number two, Mr. Speaker, is the pending bills. Mr. Speaker, I tend to think even the bill that we have before this committee is not the actual bill, because, Mr. Speaker, we have a number of contractors who've continued to come to the county government of Kericho with claims dating up to financial year 2014, 2015, 2015, 2016, and 2016, 2017. Some of those that are declared here, Mr. Speaker, are only meant for around 2018 financial year coming towards 2023. Mr. Speaker, the Controller of Budget has made it mandatory that one, all the pending bills are supposed to be first paid before any other thing. And Mr. Speaker, if this House does not properly execute some of these debts by pressurizing on the executive to ensure that they meet, they comply, Mr. Speaker, in future, the county government of Kericho may not roll out a number of projects because of the pending bills. And Mr. Speaker, from the report that we've always seen, especially out of the CPROP that we've just tabled before this House, a number of counties that have continued to do well have managed to continuously pay pay the pending bills, be it statutory or bills out of committed works. So, Mr. Speaker, as a committee, we've realized we are supposed to ensure some of these statutory deductions are paid off. At some point last financial year, Mr. Speaker, we had even committed to pay the NHT loan, and we had allocated some amount. It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that it was not used to pay the loan, because what we had done was to reduce that loan for the county government to be able to take over those houses, and we are supposed to get some revenues out of it. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, is to again request this House that even as we do the budgets, let us ensure that, one, all the departments give us the actual pending bills for us to be able to make decisions with regards to that. And this will also enable us to do proper budgetary process that takes into account all the bills that this county has accrued. With this, Mr. Speaker, I second the report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, the Honorable Kiprotich Chirogony. Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House approves the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the County Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024. The floor is open. The Honorable Eric B.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on the report on the County Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024. Before then, Mr. Speaker, allow me to thank the Chair and the Committee on the Budget and Appropriation for the great work they did to come up with this report today, Mr. Speaker, as we know that we are carrying towards the end of the financial year. Mr. Speaker, first of all, we've seen the report, and I'll just comment on two things. First, Mr. Speaker, I've seen there's some a department who doesn't have the pending bills, Mr. Speaker. And the same department, one is the Department of Trade. Mr. Speaker, I like to comment and echo, because coming up with no pending bills, there are two things: either they worked or they never worked. So I appreciate the Department of Trade, Innovation, Cooperatives and Management, Tourism. Mr. Speaker, the issue of pending bills from the report has been thorn in the flesh, Mr. Speaker. This is the great elephant in the House. And Mr. Speaker, the reason why we are coming up with these pending bills, it really started from the word commitment. I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, if all the department would have committed their work early, that is from the beginning of the execution or implementation of the budget, Mr. Speaker, we would not be having all these pending bills. Mr. Speaker, we want to encourage, and the recommendation made by the committee, Mr. Speaker, we should not be having all these pending bills every year, Mr. Speaker. The mover of the motion have rightly put in place that we still have pending bills from the year 2017 to 2018, Mr. Speaker. And we know when we have pending bills, meaning the work was done and they were never paid. Mr. Speaker, the people who are suffering are the great people of this country, because the money which are appropriated every year, Mr. Speaker, is not being utilized well. Because if you are not paying the contractors their money, Mr. Speaker, meaning most of them have auctioned their properties, Mr. Speaker. And I want to request this House, through the Committee on Implementation, through the Committee of PAC, Mr. Speaker, so that they can follow up why are these pending bills not paid at the right time, Mr. Speaker. And it has been given directive from the national government. The pending bills should be fast charged. In every year, Mr. Speaker, any other works should not begin. You should first of all allow the pending bills to be paid so that they can allow the movement and the other execution of their work within the county, Mr. Speaker. So I want to reiterate that we are going to follow up this either in the county government and the county executive and the county assembly. Because, Mr. Speaker, we also seen the statutory deduction, the laugh trust, the laugh fund has not been paid. Meaning, if someone today wants to retire, you're not going to get any good use because the interest which should have been earned through the laugh trust and laugh fund will have delayed, Mr. Speaker. So I want to believe that the recommendation made by this House today, it should be binding and we should follow it up through the Committee on Implementation and the Committee on Public Accounts and the Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support this report. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, the Honorable Eric B. The Honorable Cheriot Bet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also register my my comments, Mr. Speaker, on this report. From the onset, Mr. Speaker, let me thank the Chair of Budget and Appropriation Committee for coming up with this report, Mr. Speaker, on the County Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024. Mr. Speaker, going by this report, Mr. Speaker, we realize that we have a lot of debts in our county, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be paid, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've seen the statutory debts, Mr. Speaker, that is because of unpaid and remitted funds, Mr. Speaker, to lab fund, lab trust, Mr. Speaker. I know, Mr. Speaker, that is very unfortunate because these are deductions. Some of these deductions, Mr. Speaker, is deducted from employees, Mr. Speaker, then a certain percentage is contributed by the employer, Mr. Speaker. So when the employer, Mr. Speaker, does not remit their side of the bargain, Mr. Speaker, then the employees, Mr. Speaker, when that time comes, Mr. Speaker, they are going to be affected, Mr. Speaker. If you are, if the total amount of money that was not remitted, Mr. Speaker, to these pension funds, Mr. Speaker, amounts to 244 million, Mr. Speaker, then we are in a deep problem, Mr. Speaker. I do not want to use the word deep shit, Mr. Speaker, because that is unparliamentary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 244 million unremitted funds to lab fund and lab trust, Mr. Speaker, is killing even the morale of the employees, Mr. Speaker. We need to find a solution, Mr. Speaker, on how to repay these funds, Mr. Speaker. Where did this fund went, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, and this also, Mr. Speaker, applies to all institutions, Mr. Speaker, even the County Assembly, Mr. Speaker. We hope and trust that our contribution, Mr. Speaker, is being done timely, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, we do not want to find a situation where by the end of my term here, Mr. Speaker, the County Assembly will not be able to pay me the lab trust and lab fund, Mr. Speaker. We need to be very cautious, especially on that, Mr. Speaker. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I have seen even the loans that was the loans that were taken by the defunct county councils and authorities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think we need as a county to find a solution so that we do not, if you look at, Mr. Speaker, in other discussions, Mr. Speaker, side discussion, Mr. Speaker, we've always had this 18 million, Mr. Speaker, that the National Housing Corporation had given to the defunct county council, Mr. Speaker. But we've never had an opportunity to pay. My big question, Mr. Speaker, is are we going to be tabling the same things every other year, Mr. Speaker? I thought we should. If you go to the last last year's, Mr. Speaker, debt management strategy paper 2023, Mr. Speaker, you will also realize that we have the same National Housing Corporation, and probably, Mr. Speaker, we have the same amount of money. That is to say, Mr. Speaker, we are not paying these people. Every other year, we are capturing. How many years do we want us to capture before making payment? So I think in the coming financial year, Mr. Speaker, I will keep this report so that we see progress, Mr. Speaker. Allegation has it, Mr. Speaker, that in fact, some of these houses, Mr. Speaker, that is owned by the county government, Mr. Speaker, the National Housing Corporation has taken over the collection of rent. So what we need to be informed, Mr. Speaker, of course, through our able chair committee on land, Mr. Speaker, is which are these houses that the National Housing Corporation is now taking rent, Mr. Speaker, and how much have they collected, Mr. Speaker, so that we sit and have a structured way, Mr. Speaker, on how this 18 million will be paid, Mr. Speaker, because it is continuing to accrue interest, Mr. Speaker. So we might have a solution there, Mr. Speaker. We get the entire houses under the county government, Mr. Speaker, and the rent be remitted direct to the accounts of the National Housing Corporation. So at least we might have a solution for that case. Mr. Speaker, number 3, Mr. Speaker, is now the debt that was incurred by the defunct local authorities from contracts awarded to suppliers of goods and services, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is a pending bill before the inception of devolution, Mr. Speaker. We have a pending bill of 204 million, Mr. Speaker. That is the pending bill before the inception of devolution, Mr. Speaker. Probably, Mr. Speaker, the only 2 members serving this county assembly that were councillors before is the Honorable for Cap Katet, Mr. Speaker, Hamos Birij, and we should have a standing ovation for him, Mr. Speaker, because he was a councillor then. And number 2, Mr. Speaker, is the Honorable Francis Terer. These are the people who are still in this county assembly, and they served as councillors, Mr. Speaker. We also have another one, Mr. Speaker, from my sub-county, the Honorable Paul B, Mr. Speaker, who happened to have served as councillors, Mr. Speaker. So you can imagine, we still have a pending bill for services that was rendered during the time of those councillors. As a county government, Mr. Speaker, we need to have a structured way of how are we going to pay these 204 million, Mr. Speaker. I look into the future, Mr. Speaker, when we are tabling the next report on the debt management strategy paper, Mr. Speaker, this 204 at least will have even scaled down to 150 million, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, is the elephant in the house. And that is now the pending bill, Mr. Speaker, that the county government has incurred for services rendered during this term, Mr. Speaker. The pending bill is 465 million by 31st of December 2023, Mr. Speaker. My only question, Mr. Speaker, here is that can we, I don't know which committee will give us the exact name of maybe a road that was done and it was not paid, the exact services that was offered to the people of Kericho and they were not paid, Mr. Speaker. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, is now we are towards the end of a financial year, Mr. Speaker. This financial year is ending probably in the next 3 or 4 days, Mr. Speaker. Out of the 465 million, Mr. Speaker, that was captured by 31st of December 2023, how much has been paid, Mr. Speaker? I don't know which committee. I will ask that question, Mr. Speaker, but we seek your guidance there. Others, Mr. Speaker, I want only to comment that we should not be tabling such county debt management strategy paper, Mr. Speaker, without providing tangible solutions, Mr. Speaker. You know, we are giving out reports, but the county executive will never even look at some of these reports, Mr. Speaker. It's unfortunate because we have a rogue department called finance. We table reports here, Mr. Speaker, but they're just being left without an attendant, Mr. Speaker. How I wish that the committee concerned will follow up on the statements and reports that are tabled by this honorable house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for giving the people of Inamoya an opportunity to be heard through me.
Okay, thank you, the Honorable Achiriat. But the Honorable Ezron, get it. And then...
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir, for granted me, Mr. Speaker, so that I can support the motion by Chairman Budget and Appropriation Committee, Mr. Speaker. And before I want to laud him, Mr. Speaker, and the entire committee for ensuring that we are law compliant and timely on the passage of necessary budgetary timelines, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a requirement by law that we need to look at the budget strategy, the debt management strategy paper before passage of
of the estimate, Mr. Speaker. And I think, again, Mr. Speaker, the chairman, when he'll be replying, Mr. Speaker, I think should enlighten us again on why are we not like national government, Mr. Speaker, whereby, and there was a ruling by the judiciary that the passage of a finance bill should happen before the estimate, Mr. Speaker, because like now at the National Assembly, they are passing the finance bill before the estimate so that it can inform. But that is a subject of another day, Mr. Speaker. On the debt management strategy paper for this financial year, Mr. Speaker, it's an eye opener, Mr. Speaker. And I'm talking into perspective. One, there is an irony which is happening in our county. It's so absurd for us to come and discuss the debt which has been incurred mostly on recurrent. Recurrent should not be having any debts, Mr. Speaker, because during our normal budgetary allocation, Mr. Speaker, we are allocating a department, the county executive or the entire county, a budget of over 70%, which is geared towards recurrent expenditure. And Mr. Speaker, when you will see the absorption rate of recurrent, Mr. Speaker, mostly it's 100%, and they even overspend like the county assembly, Mr. Speaker. So it's absurd to come and realize that there is what? There is a debt which has occurred on recurrent, Mr. Speaker. So I think we need to see a clear way of handling these matters, Mr. Speaker, and we should live within our means, like the way President has decided in the National Assembly, in the National Executive, whereby we cut on unnecessary expenditure and ensure that we pay the debts, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday or 3 days ago, Mr. Speaker, our government paid close to 71.5 billion for Eurobond, which was incurred. So as a county too, Mr. Speaker, we should look away of offsetting some of the debts which are occurred. Like the debts which are, these debts which are occurring on, debts which are accrued towards housing, Mr. Speaker, of 18 million. It has been 18 million since, Mr. Speaker. So I think going forward, Mr. Speaker, I'll encourage this honorable house that we allocate this whooping 18 million to offset the loan owed to us. We owe national housing, and so that it will give us an opportunity for us to collect the rents, Mr. Speaker. The rents which are collected in our housing, which houses for county, Mr. Speaker, are all collected by housing, National Housing Corporation, towards the offsetting of those bills. And Mr. Speaker, we are allocating money for repairs of those houses, but the rent are still the same, Mr. Speaker. You find a 3-bedroom house being rented out at a rate of 10,000 or 9,000, which should basically be over 30 or 50,000 per month. So, Mr. Speaker, for us to realize that, Mr. Speaker, we need to make a hard decision and allocate 18 million. We offset the loan owed to us by National Housing Corporation so that it can give us an opportunity. We collect rates, Mr. Speaker, rents and rates, Mr. Speaker. And that will be an additional revenue generating, because if we will be able to collect, Mr. Speaker, we'll be collecting a lot of money. Mr. Speaker, the issue to do with the statutory debts, Mr. Speaker, is ironic again, Mr. Speaker, that we have not submitted or remitted statutory debts. Mr. Speaker, and you know every employee are being deducted the money for statutory deduction towards their retirement packages, Mr. Speaker. How comes an employee has sacrificed to be deducted and the same amount cannot be remitted, Mr. Speaker? I think these are the debts, Mr. Speaker, which need seriousness from the respective departmental committees, and we held every department, Mr. Speaker, and every sector accountable so that any amount which has been deducted should be electrically transmitted to the respective authorities, because there is no need to deduct a statutory amount from an employee and still not remit. So you are killing the morale and you are killing the future of an employee. So those are the things, Mr. Speaker, which this debt strategy paper is highlighting us, Mr. Speaker. And we should not be passing out and giving out recommendation only, and we are not following it up. So I think it's high time that after this, we make a serious deliberation on how strategy we are going to employ, so that we bring down this incurring debts, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of pending bills, Mr. Speaker, some of us again are contributing towards the ballooning of the pending bill in our county, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one way of reducing this ballooning wage bill, ballooning pending bill, is to live within our means. We should not be exaggerating or stretching our revenue target, Mr. Speaker, so that it can accommodate what we are intending to do. If the county government has collected 350 million this financial year, let's back our projection at 350, not to back at 1 billion and they have collected 350. You know, that gap is a creation of a huge pending bill, because right now, Mr. Speaker, we are crying that some of our roads have not been requisitioned, and the reason is that the fall in the revenue target will cause the pending bill. Because if we don't meet that revenue target and we had projected, and the service has been over towards that imaginary allocation, it creates another pending bill. So going forward, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a high opener, and should work towards that. Or we ensure that, Mr. Speaker, we press the executive to reach their potential limits of collecting revenue, Mr. Speaker. Because when you compare Homa Bay is a smallest county which doesn't have a lot of revenue, potential revenue generating indicators. You go to Muranga. Muranga is as small as county. Kirinyaga is as small as county, Mr. Speaker. You cannot compare to Kericho. And they are collecting over $1 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. For the record, in fact, Homa Bay have collected almost 1.5 billion, Mr. Speaker. And it's just, it's not magic, it's not miracle. Because Kericho County, when you go to annals of history, Kericho County was one of the richest municipalities in the entire country, Mr. Speaker. And it was loaning money to the national government when you go to history, Mr. Speaker. And it is ironical that the one lender county is now the least in revenue collection, Mr. Speaker. So I think we should smell the coffee, Mr. Speaker, and wake up, Mr. Speaker, from slumber and walk towards what should be done, Mr. Speaker, and restore the lost glory and the lost dignity of our county, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we are the executive now that we are passing the budget, Mr. Speaker, and we have considered the additional allocation towards employment of revenue staff, Mr. Speaker, of which, if we employ more and there is no goodwill between the executive and the county assembly, the cry will be the same. So I think this should be a high opener. We should wake up from the slumber. We should smell the coffee and realize that we are steering the port of Kericho to the wrong direction instead of taking to the right direction. Otherwise, I support.
All right, thank you, the Honorable Ezron. You will allow that I'll give to the Honorable Peter Kemoy, and then after that I'll call the mover of the motion to reply. Probably I'll encourage the other honorable members to smell the coffee, as of course the Honorable Ezron has requested you to do that. The Honorable Peter Kemoy, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I've just raised only on one comment that if these pending bills to be approved right, they should have attached all the documents that prove, or they would have attached the documents that prove these are the pending bills we have in this Kericho County. Otherwise, these are figures. We don't know if they are genuine or not. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Okay. Honorable members and the chairperson budget, you have had that. Maybe you will respond to that as you reply. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank honorable members for supporting this report, and allow me to reply. I will start with the one from Peter Kemoy, and I will suggest that maybe from our recommendations, Mr. Speaker, we noted that and request that the Committee on Finance and Economic Planning should liaise with the respective sectoral committees so that they go and confirm those figures, because even us, we were not sure if these are the right pending bills. So I want you to use your authority to make sure that the Committee on Finance, to make sure that they deliberate with all the chairs, to make sure that they know the surety of these pending bills. The Speaker will also respond to Ezron on the issue of finance bill. Why are we not approving alongside budget estimates? And to inform him that it was specifically, that ruling was specifically for National Assembly, and as we speak, National Assembly has not amended Public Finance and Management Act. So we'll only do that when the PFM Act is amended. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I wish members all the best as we plan for budget estimates in the afternoon or tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, the Honorable Chairman, for your reply. I now rise to put a question, which is that this House approves the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the County Debt Management Strategy Paper 2024. Will as many as are of similar opinion say aye? Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? And the ayes have it. Honorable members, having adopted this said report, and of course listening to the sentiments of the honorable members, including the chair himself, the chairman of the Budget and Appropriation Committee, a number of issues have been raised, and I would like to direct as follows: Committee on Implementation to investigate the extent of the implementation of these pending bills. Honorable members, the issue of statutory, as raised by the chairman, if you look at it, has been reported for the last 9 editions of the debt management strategy paper, and as you have seen from the report, it is interest bearing as well as also accrues penalty. So the Committee on Implementation to look into that matter. Secondly, there is the aspect of this House a while ago, a few minutes ago, adopted the Kericho County Budget Review and Outlook Paper 2023, which had indicated that the Department of the County Public Service Board, as well as that of the Office of the Governor, has reported over expenditure. Secondly, in the report that has just been approved or adopted by the House, the same Department of the Office of the Governor, as well as that of the County Public Service Board, reported pending bills. Honorable members, that is very serious violation of the PFM Act. And I again direct that the committee on implementation to look into those issues that have been raised, interrogate the expenditure of these offices so that they can adhere strictly to the budget that has been approved by this House. I direct that the Committee on Implementation look into those issues, not limited to the directive that I've given, but based on these two reports, to look into those matters together with the one that I directed earlier while approving the county budget review and outlook paper. So the chairman, Committee on Implementation, is not here. Vice Chairman. Yeah, the Honorable Lisa Metker, please note those ones, and the clerk shall advise accordingly and ensure that those has been responded to. Thirdly, is on the Committee on Finance and Economic Planning on the issue of pending bills. I direct that you look into the issues of pending bills that have been raised as adopted by this report, and also report to this House in the next 21 days. That will suffice, that will address the issues raised by honorable members, among them the Honorable Peter Kemo, as well as the chairman, or even the Honorable Ezron Ngetich. So you have 21 days to report. Honorable members, as we finalize, I want to refer you to your standing order number 181, subsection 2, and just to read for you, your standing order number 181 says it is on the frequency of meetings. And I'll read standing order number 181, subsection 2, say, except for the Assembly Business Committee, a select committee shall not meet during a sitting of the Assembly without the written permission of the Speaker. Please note that, Honorable Chairpersons, and also the Office of the Clerk, we don't expect that you facilitate committee meetings unless with the express permission of the Speaker. And therefore, the meetings that were ongoing was just basically Kamukunji meetings. Secondly, I refer you back to section 239. You are standing order number 239. Standing order number 239, and that is on the sittings arrangement of this county assembly. Having seen that, and I will refer you to subsection 1, where they are saying there shall be reserved seats in the chamber of the assembly for the exclusive use of which the following: 1, chairperson of the committees; B, leader of the majority party, leader of minority party, members with disabilities. And I'll take you to subsection 3, which says, subject to this standing order and any order of the assembly, any question relating to the occupation of the seats in the chamber shall be determined by the Speaker. Honorable members, I noticed this morning that some of the honorable members were occupying the seat of the leader of majority, as well as that of the chairperson, the chairman of the chairpersons, which is currently being occupied by none other than the Honorable Paul Chirchir. The Honorable Paul Chirchir, you are out of order and you should sit in you should occupy your seat. And I want to direct as follows, so that the clerk please note that as we resume our sittings next week, as per standing order number 239, subsection section 3, that you indicate the seats of the following. 1, of course, you had indicated, as I directed, the one for the leader of the chief whip and the deputy majority, deputy minority, but I direct as follows, that you indicate the seats of the following honorable ranking members. 1, the Honorable Cheriot Bett from Ainamui, who is serving this third county assembly for the third time, as well as the Honorable Albert Kipkoech. I will continue giving further directions as per the standing orders on the order of those arrangements. And I can see the Honorable Paul Chirchir has taken his place, which is Any other seat, honorable members, that has not been marked is free for any member to occupy at any given point in time. So thank you so much, and we hope that we follow what is in our standing orders. So, honorable members, there being no other order of business, I would have given an opportunity to the Honorable Paul Chichir, but I realized that there are some issues going on outside. I thought he was the one, but nevertheless, there being no order of business, this assembly stands adjourned until 2:30 p.m.